Unreal Engine 5.6 is coming down the pipe here in a month or two. Right now it's in preview. This is fairly exciting. I guess the big question is, should you update your game to Unreal 5.6? And I would say yes, unless your game is close to release. If it's 6 months out from release, lock it in, keep it where it's at. I will definitely be upgrading to the latest version. 5.6 is looking very promising. Of all the versions so far, 5.6 looks to be the best. Well, let's check out the public roadmap, which I already have open right here. We can see the first here at the top for rendering. And this is where we're going to get a lot of our performance improvements. Lumen hardware ray tracing optimizations. Lumen right now does suck up a lot of performance. So any improvements to Lumen is just going to be a positive. If you're using Lumen, this can only help you. It's going to deliver greater performance on current gen hardware, faster rendering. They're trying to get to that 60 hertz frame rate. That's great. RHI render parallelization. They're just doing more with getting things multi-threaded. And this was something Tim Sweeney mentioned in his roadmap for Unreal Engine 6.0. They're focusing more on multi-threading, which is very exciting. They're going to fully utilize multi-threading capabilities. That's great. This one here, bindless resources. I'm not quite sure how this will help me yet. I'm sure it will help somebody out there. This one may not be as important for a lot of people just yet. It's a low-level feature for texture management, not a direct user-facing feature, but it might be of interest for some users writing plugins. Heterogeneous volumes really just depends if your game is using this type of effect. These are performant-heavy effects. I've been experimenting with some of the new volumetric effects in Niagara, so perhaps this will help a tiny bit, but overall, I don't really care about that one. This one here, virtual shadow maps. I do care a lot about this one. I am using virtual shadow maps in my game. There's been a lot to optimize this, making sure the world position offset disables at a certain distance so that the shadow map invalidations are not occurring so often. So with this virtual shadow maps, it has optimized scene culling. There was a video posted somewhere about a side-by-side for Unreal 5.5 and 5.6 and using a demo scene from Epic. And it showed about a 5 to 10 FPS gain just by upgrading to 5.6, all other settings being the same. And one of the big things in that video was the primitives were basically cut in half. So it was rendering like half the primitives in 5.6 without any changes. So I gotta believe that that has to do with the optimized scene culling here with virtual shadow maps. I'll try to show that or link that somewhere. This could be the biggest performance increase we see just by updating to 5.6. Substrate, I'm not too excited with right at this moment. I am not using Substrate. I do not want to learn Substrate just yet. I'm not planning to update my materials to Substrate anytime soon. In my next game in a couple years from now, maybe they will all be Substrate materials, but right now, anything that says Substrate, I basically ignore. This is just getting it up to on par with the current material system. So at the moment, Substrate stuff, I just look at the progress of it, but not really too excited about it. First person rendering, my game's not going to be first person, so this one as well does not really apply to my game, and I largely just ignore this sort of thing. Depth of field is interesting. I do use different depth of field effects in my cinematics for my game. Overall, this is just a little effect. Seems interesting, but don't really care about it too much. And then we have this GPU Profiler 2.0. The Profiler confuses the heck out of me, so anything they can do to make it better is a plus with me. So rendering here, I believe we'll see the largest gains, especially virtual shadow maps, Lumen, and the other stuff just seems nice bonus things. Down in character and animation, I am using Sequencer a lot for my cinematics, and I have a lot of cinematics in my game, but being a solo developer, I cannot dedicate so much time to all of the features they show here. I try to limit the amount of animation I need to do. I am excited for this sequencer change, this organization. Now there's a navigation panel. That's awesome. When you have a lot of things in your sequencer graph, it's a headache to browse through it. So this is looking awesome. I love the outliner style panel that they're adding to it. This should help a ton. Anything experimental, I don't really care about. So most of this is exciting and cool for people that want to animate in Unreal Engine, but I'm hoping to do as little as that as possible. Relative time scaling, this looks super interesting. I don't think it's going to be much of a feature that I personally use, but it seems super cool. If your sequence is timed based on the audio track, it looks like if you have different types of audio, different localizations for your audio, it'll scale based on the different audio track. That seems very awesome. My game is too far along to try to change things to use this right now. My timings are based off of the events that are going on in the cinematic and less so about the audio. This may have been something I would have worked around and worked with when I started my game, but I'm too far along to change it now. But this is super cool. Retargeting, anything that helps retargeting is going to be great because retargeting is a pain in the neck. Tweening, I think this is an awesome little feature. Just helps hone in on curves and animating things a little quicker and easier. Motion trails, this may be helpful to somebody. Sequencer curves, this is going to be very helpful. In addition with the tween tools we just looked at, allowing you to animate a little easier. So they fixed something with being able to multi-select different fields and update them at the same time. I actually do this quite often when I'm creating my cinematics, and they have been very glitchy the way it worked. So I'm hoping now I'll just be a little more efficient when I'm creating my cinematics. So that's a good update right there. More retargeting features and enhancements looks interesting. More experimental features, control rig, morph shapes. A lot of this stuff just does not apply to me. I'm not using it for my game, so we'll skip a lot of that. I've seen this rig locomotor. The person who programmed this was posting about it on X, and it looks super cool. Even though it's experimental, it's something I definitely would have tried when I was setting up my characters. I think it's a little too late now to make use of it, but for quadrupeds or more legged creatures in games, this definitely seems like a cool little thing. Right now it's experimental, so perhaps in my next game or if I import some new creatures, maybe I'll give it a try. Works on characters with any number of limbs, so that right there. The MetaHuman creator in Unreal Engine itself, that's going to be pretty awesome. The whole process of going to the MetaHuman creator and exporting to Unreal is a little bulky, so doing this directly in editor is going to be a breeze. Now, I do not actually use MetaHumans. I've customized the MetaHuman meshes, and my characters are basically just all particle-looking people, so I will not be using this. And then they're also working on resizable clothing and a body system. This was a huge missing piece with MetaHuman. The thing with MetaHumans is if you want a unique character, you still need to create it in an external program. MetaHuman is good for that, like crowd people, but for your hero character, you're still going to want to create a unique mesh, a unique silhouette in an external program. This is going to be great for cinematics that are using lots of people in them and they want a variety. Facial animations, the more and more they do with this facial animation stuff and being able to record a live action view and then transferring it to a character in game in real time, this is just going to get us virtual reality where you're talking to these avatars in a game and watching their lips and expressions happening in real time. This is like a neutral expression, and this is now her eyes are opened a little wider and there's a lot more head movement in this surprise mode here. It looks very good. The more they do here, the more we're going to see this eventually come to some sort of metaverse. So this one here, mutable macro libraries and streaming, just seems like a performance enhancement. Won't really apply to my game. So this trajectory recording tool is something to do with animating on a path, and it's going to help motion matching. Definitely something that could be helpful, but a lot of this stuff is very time consuming. And for me, I'm going to try to avoid a lot of this. Anything that improves my efficiency, I'm all for, which is sequencer organization, curves, fixes here, tweening tools. Those are the things I'm most excited about. The rest are nice to haves and small little things for people doing certain types of animations. World building is a big one for my game. My game's all about a large open world, and it is utilizing a lot of the newest technology. So this one here, Fast Geometry plugin, it's experimental, but this thing I'm the most excited for here. Right now, my game is doing pretty well on performance on newer graphics cards, but there's still small hitching on older graphics cards when streaming in the world. And it's just these small little hitches when a new grid of my world partition loads in. It's not always super apparent, but sometimes, it's just this small little hitch. So I'm really hoping this fast geometry streaming, I'm definitely going to give this a try, even though it's experimental, and just see if things can pop in without the hitching. So my game, you fly through the world pretty quickly, faster than most ground-based travel, because my game, you play as like this eagle character that's flying about 10 times faster than a character you would have running across the ground. So with such speed flying through the air, things get loaded in quite often, new grids are loaded in, and that speed just causes these noticeable hitches. So something like this, I'm super excited about. They even give example CVARs here. They use these for their city example, and they're traveling quite quick in this example up here. So I'm hoping that this is going to work well on my game and eliminate that tiny hitching right now that I'm getting. And then we have streaming performance. Again, I'm using world partition, and this also looks like it could apply and help with any little performance with streaming in and out the world. So I'm also very excited for this one. I'll be keeping an eye out. Bookmarks. I mean, this just seems like a quality of life thing that is a nice to have, especially if you're creating some sort of cinematic or something and you want to return to that location. I don't think a feature like this really deserved its own little box here. It just seems like whatever. Sub-world partition HLODs. This is another one I'm actually very excited for. If you're building an open world game, you need to use HLODs. It's practically mandatory. And one thing I was having problems with was HLODs for sub-levels, and I think this might address that. I do have some larger level instances that are essentially sub-levels. I've been trying to figure out how to set them up with HLODs for the longest time, and this looks perfect for doing that. So this could be big for another little performance enhancement. So this right here, landscape batched merge, is going to be helpful with large landscapes and when you're using the blueprint brushes and the patches plugin. I do not use these because they're just so performant heavy on large landscapes that I basically just sculpt my landscapes manually, and I don't have any of this stuff turned on. I'm not using landscape layers. They're all disabled. If this helps performance with large landscapes, I could finally use these tools. That will be very nice. That would be helpful. Maybe I will try it on my next level that I need to build. Right now, it's just such a pain in the neck when you're working on a landscape and the performance, you just can't sculpt or do anything because there's so much processing going on and it's just too laggy. So this could be helpful there. Landscape level instance and data layer support. I am also very excited for this. I actually do have different landscapes in some level instances right now in my game, and I am fully utilizing data layers in my game as well. So now this feature to edit landscapes within the level instance, that's awesome. I was missing that. And then also partitioned actors such as landscape and foliage can be reassigned to different data layers. I've been missing this for ages. There's been workarounds to do this, but it's not really supported by the engine, but you were able to do it. It was just this roundabout way of assigning foliage to different data layers. Currently in 5.5 and earlier, you have to make the data layer active and then you create your foliage and it will be assigned to that data layer. And there was no way to change the foliage from one data layer to the next. It was just like impossible. You had to regenerate it or recreate it or something. Just being able to change the data layers for the landscape and the foliage, that's massive. I am extremely excited for this one. So all these world building items, basically excited about all of them except who cares about bookmarks and the batched merge. I mean, I probably won't be using it, but we'll see. Other than that, there's some real big items here that I'm just excited for. Procedural content generation, PCG. This here is a huge topic. It's gaining a lot of steam. Tons of people are using this for so much stuff, including myself. GPU for graphs and microscattering, sure, just makes the PCG more performant. I do have some huge PCG graphs that can really get bogged down. I generate and go walk away and come back in like 10 or 15 minutes or something like that. So any performance gains will be great. Again, more performance stuff. I think a lot of this has to do with PCG real-time performance, whereas I'm using PCG to just generate some foliage and landscape stuff, and I don't want to generate it at runtime, so I'm doing it in advance. So a lot of this performance stuff I think is for runtime PCG, and this is more GPU stuff with PCG. This just throws more things on the GPU. At some point, we're going to want things on the CPU. There's just so much stuff is getting on the GPU here. We can't throw it all on there. We need the CPU to do some work around here. So this one here could help me tremendously. I do have some PCG graphs that are just so large, and this is reducing memory of the point data. Looks good. Hopefully it helps a lot with just iterating and updating them and changing my world based on changes to the PCG. This one here, again, just more performance stuff. I have noticed PCG performance increases every single update of Unreal Engine, and it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, they're doing a lot with it. PCG is super powerful. I'm happy with all of these iterative changes. It's just going to make the whole thing so much better. The biome plugins, I'm not using the biomes, but yeah, looks awesome. Metadata domains is more programming the PCG and setting attributes and reading them. It's just going to make your PCGs a lot more flexible and being able to do more advanced things with them. This just makes them even more robust. This one here is the one that stood out the most to me. Having these parameter graphs, a whole interface for them. Right now, the parameters are on this like sidebar in PCG all the way at the bottom, and it's kind of cumbersome. Now they're in their own little graph. You set up the parameters, you can set the parameters, and now you can also share these parameters with different PCG graphs. So this one, of all of the features, most of these features so far are performance related. This one here is a nice quality of life feature that I think a lot of people will appreciate. This one stands out to me the most as something that will directly change my workflow a little bit. Inline constants. This looks like just another robust feature for how you can program PCGs. Something like this. Yeah, I can see where I've wanted to like set a constant somewhere in my PCG graph. Preview, viewports. This looks interesting. Definitely should allow for quicker iteration with PCG, allowing to see what's being done in a faster manner. It's like the material graph. It's just going to allow for faster iteration and changes while creating your PCG. Debugging's, I always have issues with debugging PCG. It's just so cumbersome. So whatever enhancements they can do here is good. Templates seem great for larger teams where there's somebody dedicated to creating a template and you want everybody to use or follow that template. Solo developers or smaller teams, it could come in handy as well. So graph customization, it's related to the template graphs, and you can lock certain attributes from being changed and make things accessible or inaccessible. So that's just more for a team environment. Being able to control how the graphs generate things can be helpful if you want certain static meshes generated before doing some other sample, and then you want things spawned on top of those static meshes, all within the same PCG graph. It looks like now you can set these weight nodes that allow you to wait for things to happen. So that's pretty cool. Tons more nodes added, just making programming PCGs more robust, being able to do more stuff, generate grass maps, get virtual texture data, wait node, spawn instance actors, a lot of cool stuff in there. A lightweight instance of complex actors, being able to spawn those in. I guess this is like if you want like interactable trees or foliage and you have a blueprint for these or anything like that, you can spawn in the instance actor version of them. And then when the player is within a certain radius of the instance actor, it turns into the full actor. So this is a very powerful tool. So for PCG, they have this whole section here. There's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of performance gains at runtime, and a lot of robustness coming to PCG, some quality of life enhancements with the parameters, the viewports. So just good quality of life changes and some performance enhancements. Developer iteration, cooking, building your game, especially in team environments. All these tools help that, where you have automated cooking every night or every couple hours. You create a build of the game and test it. The thing for a indie dev or solo dev that I see is the project launcher UI. The project launcher is so cumbersome. It's really just not the greatest tool. So hopefully this new UI for it will work out. I mean, we'll see. Really, this is the only thing I really care about in this section. So audio, I am not using meta sounds. I would like to experiment with them, but it's just another time sink and I don't have time for it at the moment. Audio in my game, I do more at the end. A lot of this audio stuff looks cool, but I'm not seeing too much I really want to dive into at the moment. I think the biggest one might be the subtitle plugin. Subtitles, I've already created my own custom subtitle system, but this here looks very interesting to me. It's so interesting, I might want to actually experiment with this. This is doing practically exactly what I am doing in a more manual way. Having the subtitles draggable in the sequence like this seems very interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to checking this one out. I think this is the biggest thing I see in the audio section. Coming down to platforms, a lot of this I can't say it really applies to me at the moment. I will be trying to put my game on console, but not on Android or mobile. I do not think it'll be that fun of a time trying to do that. So for Android stuff and iOS, I'm not too interested. Motion design stuff, what I see is the Photoshop layer import. This one's huge. This brings things more in parity with Unity, which I know you can already import Photoshop layers into Unity. So being able to import them natively into the engine, that's going to be awesome. The rest of this, great if you're in broadcast. I'm not sure how great this will be for video games, but who knows. Frameworks, a lot here that seems interesting as well. Mass AI. The Mass AI system is just so confusing right now. The more they do with it, the more interested I get with it. They've been advertising Mass AI since the Matrix sample that they put out like years ago now with the city sample. And it's just has not been in a place where I want to make use of it yet. I do think I could use it, but the more mature it gets, the more interested I'll become with it. The Mover plugin, I experienced this a little bit last year during the Titan event where there was like several months of thousands of people building an open world game and they had the Mover plugin. It's still a fairly new system, but it has a lot of potential and I see it coming into play in the near future. I'm definitely not migrating my current characters to the Mover plugin, but for a brand new game, it's something I will definitely hope to use. More mass stuff, debugging it. All the features they add to mass will make it much more appealing to use. Everything with mass entity is just experimental right now, so it's hard to get excited about it until it's ready for prime time. Gameplay cameras. Camera systems are huge with game feel and making your game feel awesome. So the more features you can have on your camera is that's great. State trees. I just hope this doesn't break the state trees that I've already created for my game. I am using state trees and trying to prioritize them over the older behavior trees. In my game, I basically do have a combination. So right now it's like I have some AI that just use a state tree and some AI that's just using behavior tree. Going forward, I'm going to continue using state trees. More mass stuff, experimental, more state tree stuff, state trees, and then networking system. So I don't really know what the Iris networking system is, and my game's not multiplayer. Simulation and VFX. Niagara is huge. I have tons of Niagara effects in my game, so everything that helps Niagara is a bonus. Niagara is a massive system that can do so much stuff. Some of these things are not that large of a ticket item. Chaos Cloth, super cool for characters. Cloth, in my opinion, is still very performant heavy. I'm not sure how much this would help that. Chaos in general is performance heavy. I'm hoping some of these changes will help performance. I'm not necessarily seeing that at the moment. It's just more features that are making Chaos more robust. So I think the biggest ones here that might help performance could be just Chaos Core. Seems to be improvements, multi-threading. Hopefully that helps with some performance, and then the destruction of it. Hopefully whatever they're updating with Chaos Destruction just makes it more performant. I've experimented with Chaos. I know people are getting great results with it. It does take a lot of time to set it up and get the performance out of it that you would want for like a real-time usage. Chaos is just a big system. I don't have too much time to play with it, but I do intend to try to use it still. I've pretty much eliminated it at the moment for performance reasons. We have two little things down here with editor. They've made some big changes to the UI of the engine. First one, the content browser. It looks a lot more cluttered. They're adding these like tags that say Fab if the asset's from Fab. Not sure how I like that. Maybe it's good. I mean, overall, it looks the same. They have this Fab button now. They're just getting Fab integrated into the engine. So I guess that's good. And then this is the big one here. This interface change, they completely redid this bar at the top and just have all these new buttons for various things. I think it's going to take a short amount of time to get used to where everything is now. I do think it will be a little better from what I'm seeing. I haven't used it yet, but all the scale, the snapping and all that used to be on the right side. Now it's all right here on the left, and I believe it changes based on some of the modeling tools that you're using, and I'm sure it will be enhanced even further with other modes, perhaps in landscape mode, foliage mode, etc. They'll probably customize and change the buttons based on what mode you're in, similar to a 3D modeling tool, how the buttons change based on what mode you are in. Now all of the UE5 tutorials out there, they're going to be a little harder to follow because, I've created a couple tutorials. I was like, click this button. Now the buttons have changed and they're all over the place and everything's reset and it's a different learning experience again. So sucks for people just trying to learn Unreal and they want to follow a tutorial, but hopefully it's for the better. Down here in media, I think this dockable media viewer thing is actually super cool. This is something animators and modelers do in 3D programs all of the time. You dock a 2D image into the viewport and then you model based on the reference in the 3D engine. So now they can do this in Unreal. It might not be as powerful because we're still not fully modeling like a 3D character in Unreal, but for animating, it looks like it could be helpful. More just overall improvements to sequencer and different things. We'll skip a lot of that. Production rendering pipeline. They have this whole section here with being able to render out to a cinematic, something that could be useful when creating a game trailer, but it's most useful for virtual production and stuff like that. Then there's the virtual production section, end display, DLSS support, take recorder, all this good for just virtual production, not too applicable to game dev, so we'll skip all that. But overall, a lot of nice little features, a lot of quality of life changes, and I think there are some big performance gains in here. Lumen, virtual shadow maps, fast geometry streaming, HLODs and sublevels, PCG streaming performance. And so far, 5.6 is looking to be the best version yet. I think it's definitely going to be worth upgrading. I always update 1 or 2 months after it's released. I will, of course, download the engine right away, but I will not migrate my project until all plugins are compatible with it. I don't have many plugins in my game. First, because I hate waiting for them to be compatible with the newest engine versions. But the very few plugins I do have, I want to make sure all of them are compatible. If 5.6 is coming out in June, I'm looking at August or September to migrate to that engine version. And within that 1 or 2 months, normally there's 1 or 2 hot fixes that will fix a couple things. Always good to wait for those hot fixes, let other people battle test the engine and figure out what's broken. And then Epic will come in and hot fix some stuff and just make it that much better. There have been hot fixes that have drastically changed the stability. For example, 5.5 was a complete mess all the way until the second or third hotfix. And now I'm in 5.5 and it's been great. I think it's a great stable version of the engine. And if you're not on 5.5 hotfix 3, then why not? Because I think it's the best one yet. And again, 5.6 looks to just be even that much better. I've been on every single engine version of this. There's really no reason to stay in the past unless your game is super close to being released. All right, that's it. See you in the next one. Take care.